I'm not gonna tip you just because you turned the iPad around and I pushed the button, bro. Like,
Yep.
the comment that I absolutely hate the most is like when people say like, if you can't tip, don't go out. Like,
Right.
it's not. I'm not gonna give out free money, and it's just companies trying to get away with not paying their employees what they
Yes.
deserve. And
They
they
give
have
them-
the assets to pay these people more, but they just don't want to.
Yep.
And they give you this option to tip, given this like social pressure to
Yep.
tip. And I agree with you. Like, if it's a server and they're coming multiple times and they're giving me good service, bro, I'm gonna
No
tip
doubt.
you. If you're a bad server, you don't get a tip, bro. Like, if you're not working hard, if you come and like you give me water once and you don't come till I ask for the check, like, I'm not gonna fucking tip you. Like, tips are earned, bro. Like, tips are earned, and companies should pay their people more so they don't have to fucking worry about tip.
Do you tip after eating at a restaurant using a rideshare app? What about after you're served at a beauty salon or a barbershop? How about this? Have you ever received a tip while you were working? And if so, did it feel good? Did you make it feel like it was a good job well done? Or was it awkward or insulting? So this conversation can leave many questions like, how much do you tip? What's the percentage? Is it based off your own scale? What constitutes a fair tip? Today we'll get into the surprising history of gratuity and take a deep dive into tipping etiquette. So tipping is common practice in America, but have you ever wondered about how it all started and why we do it? Currently, it is expected in most areas of the U.S. to tip after being serviced in certain industries. However, tipping hasn't always been a thing. When I was researching, I found a couple origin stories. The first one is about the actual word tip. So it's believed that in the 18th century, when tipping actually began, in those days, it was customary to give a tip to the servers in the tavern. So this ensured that your food got there faster. The word tip is supposed to be an acronym that stands for to ensure promptness. However, I found a source that says that that's simply a myth. What they actually believe to be the true history of tipping is that wealthy Americans in like the 1850s and 1860s, they traveled to Europe and then they picked up on their tradition. So in medieval Europe, masters would reward their servants with extra money for doing a really good job. So the Americans wanted to seem more highbrow and aristocratic, and they started doing the same thing when they got back to America. So the history of tipping doesn't stop there. So when a tradition was brought back to the US, a lot of people were like, hold up, we're against tipping. I feel like this is condescending, it's classist. And the poor were like, how is it fair for us to pay for, on top of a meal, pay for a tip? There was a lot of pushback on tips, but surprise, it didn't go in the opposer's favor because we now know everybody went the opposite way and they really leaned into tipping, and we still do it to this day. And this, boys and girls, is because of what? Slavery. So after slavery ended, people were free, but they still had severely limited choices. So most people worked as sharecroppers, and those that didn't work as sharecroppers, they worked as barbers, railroad porters, servants, and waitstaff. So the railroad porters and the restaurant workers, the employers actually did not pay them. So instead, they would employ them under the condition that the customers will offer a small tip instead. So basically, the restaurant industry continued slavery using zero pay and tips. Now, in recent years, tipping has changed for these three main reasons. Number one, the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we tipped people that we didn't usually tip, and then we tipped even more generously to support the essential workers. So the pandemic went away, but the expectations of all those tips did not.
I think we can all agree that tipping culture has gotten completely out of control, at least here in America. Watch what happens when this guy goes to a self-checkout kiosk at the airport to try and purchase this bottle of water.
I'm at a Chibo Express at the airport. There are no employees, right? So, wait for this. I'm going to go in, I'm going to get an iced tea or something.
Now remember, there's no employees at the counter here.
That's all I want. Now, I'm not going to see any employees. I'm not seeing it all. This is what I say. I see a checkout here, right? Okay.
All by yourself.
Scan it. Okay. Now, I'm going to flip you around just so you see what I see. See that? So I'm going to say next. Would I like to leave a tip? I have not seen a single employee. I have scanned my own Perrier, and now the robot wants me to tip it. Should I do like 18%? Getting 20%?
Number 2, technology. So the way we pay has a huge impact on tipping. So think about going to your local cafe, order your food, and now it's time to pay. So the cashier turns the screen to you, and on your screen is the price along with the different options of tip increments, and then you got the option of no pay. So now the person who serves you is right in front of you, and you have to decide to tip or not to tip. So you have this social pressure because the person is right in front of you, and you don't want to be seen as that person who doesn't tip. And it almost feels like you have no choice in whether you tip or not. And like compared to using Uber or Lyft for a tip, being a person can feel much more like social pressure. So with the ride sharing apps, you've already gotten to your destination. So there isn't this nudging feeling to tip because you're not face to face with the driver. And to be honest, a lot of times we just forget anyway. Also in my research, y'all know the company Square, right? So it's the company that creates the point of sale system so that customers can pay electronically. So I found out that Square actually gets a cut of the money, including the tip of every single transaction. So basically, when companies like Square, who create the software, encourage tipping, it means there's more money for Square. So the more people tip, the more money Square can get. The third reason is job market and inflation. So restaurants and other service-based businesses are competing for workers. They're trying to recruit them by offering them higher pay and better benefits. And they're doing this all while they're trying to keep prices as low as possible. So they realize customers are sensitive to any signs of like price increase or inflation. So now the workers still are not being paid a sufficient wage, and the businesses are trying to keep the menu price the same. Basically, tipping is a way to pay workers more without actually paying them more so that restaurants can keep their menu prices low.
Tipping culture is a scam. Stop doing it. Let them do their job.
As the owner of 3 restaurants, let me dive into this a little bit, because a lot of people, and I see a lot of the comments on this particular video, that people believe that we're scamming them. They're letting restaurant owners get away with stuff. So here's the thing. This is how businesses run. Either you do the tipping culture where you have the freedom and the consumer has the choice of how much my staff member deserves to get paid in this regard, or you can make me do it, which let's say I do $15, $20 an hour for my bartenders and servers. Now that $6 Bud Light is $12, and I am forcing you to pay them what they need to be paid. So rather incentivize them to do a good job with the tipping culture, I'm just telling you how much you're going to pay them. So tipping culture is a good thing, I promise you.
The conversation surrounding tipping is still a controversial one, with some believing it's outdated and unequal because, after all, not all service workers receive tips, and they believe that tips lead to wage disparities. So in recent years, some restaurants have actually experimented with the no tipping policy. So instead, they opt for higher menu prices to provide fair wages for all staff. Thank you for watching. And now I'd like to hear from you. Meet me down in the comments. Give me your thoughts. Should we do away with tipping? Do you always tip? Is tipping reaching its tipping point? Y'all let me know. I'll talk to you in our next video. Bye-bye.